Hello, everybody. This is Michael Siggins from the Channel Pro Network, and I want to thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy day today to join us for our live webinar. We've got a really excellent and timely topic today. Today we're going to be talking about cloud failover at the flick of a switch. Business continuity starts with StorageCraft. Our presenter today is Martin Merrill. He's Senior Sales Engineer at StorageCraft. Before we turn the reins over to Martin, I just want to cover a few things that we put together to make sure that this is a very educational and interesting session for you today. First of all, we always love to have our audience participate, and the best and easiest way for you to do that is to simply submit some questions. Down in the lower left side of your browser window, you should see a chat area. Feel free to send questions in there. We will do our best to get to them based on kind of timing and format of the webinar today. One of the most popular questions that we do get, so maybe I can save you some typing, is if the slide deck will be available. And yes, we will be doing some follow-up with all of our attendees today and getting that information to you, including the slide deck. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Martin. Martin, please take it away.
All right, I will take it away. Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate the introduction. And I want to extend my own personal welcome to everybody who's attending the webinar today. This is actually a fantastic opportunity for me to kind of chat about what I think and what Mike has actually echoed, a real pertinent and important topic that's really becoming more and more important, I guess, as time goes on, and especially in the IT world, and that is the ability to save and protect your data in the cloud, but not even just the archiving and storage of your data, but also the ability to utilize a cloud, a cloud service in order to provide failover and get critical business systems up and running again in the event of an actual disaster. It's becoming more and more apparent now that having your backup, your data available and ready to go in the event of a disaster off-site, a lot of people are really beginning to see the value in that. So what I'm going to be covering today is briefly, some of the things that StorageCraft is actually doing in the cloud when it comes to backup and disaster recovery. I'll quickly cover some of the service levels that we offer, but then in order for you to understand and kind of see how the whole picture kind of gets all put together, we're going to go back a little bit before we can go forward. And I want to introduce you to the StorageCraft image-based backup solution and share how all the different components work together so that you can have a front-to-back recovery solution, not just locally, but also being able to highlight and show you what it is that we do in the StorageCraft Cloud. All right, so I guess if we're going to take a look at an agenda, it's going to look something like this. First off, we've already had the introductions, and once again, my name is Martin Merrill, a sales engineer with StorageCraft. Then we're going to cover the information about the StorageCraft Cloud services, and of course, this will be the bulk of the presentation today. And then, of course, afterwards, we will have questions and answers. As Mike was saying, that is something that we like to make sure that we get the audience participation. So please feel free. If you do have questions, make sure that you throw those in that little chat bar down below. And then there's a quick reminder. I want to share that StorageCraft is currently offering some a great promotion around our image-based backup and cloud services together. It's all bundled together, and I'll chat briefly about that. But without any further ado, then let's just kind of talk a little bit about StorageCraft Cloud Services. Now, again, I've kind of given a quick introduction. Cloud Services, in this case, is referring to the ability that StorageCraft has to be able to take a terrible situation where, let's say, you've had just an awful disaster locally. Nothing's working. Your critical systems have all failed, regardless of whatever the situation may have been. Maybe it was a ransomware attack. Maybe you were the unfortunate victim of flooding, or maybe a terrible earthquake, or whatever it is. I mean, we can always think of all sorts of terrible disasters that may cause our critical systems to fail, to not be available. But the question is, okay, what do we do now? And having the right plan and the right solution in place is going to go, it's going to take you leaps and bounds in being able to keep your systems running and actually be able to keep your business going. So what is it that StorageCraft actually has to offer when it comes to our cloud services? So, to kind of help you get your head around it, what StorageCraft has always envisioned when it came to our ability to put together a great cloud failover solution, we had an objective of 99.99959 uptime. Right? We want to make sure that when you have a critical system failure, you're not going to be stuck with your systems down for a long period of time. We have the ability within the StorageCraft Cloud service to bring systems online very, very quickly. And we actually have a solution in place that allows you to fail over and actually control those machines and attach to those machines and actually run as if your machines have never failed by way of the different services that we offer there. As you can see, the three different pieces that are kind of all a part of that. First off, you want to be able to protect your physical and virtual servers and everything that's actually local. We want to be able to protect those, whether it's a Windows environment or a Linux environment. And then, of course, locally, without the use of our cloud service, we'd love for you to be able to be back up and running again very, very quickly. And the StorageCraft Shadow Protect solution is actually built for that specific type of scenario to get you back up and running, not in hours or days, but literally in seconds. We can have machines up and running again. And then, of course, when it comes to the cloud services, we want to make sure that your offsite data is safe, that it is encrypted, and that it is actually kept to specific data center security standards. And, of course, it is in the StorageCraft Cloud that we can actually help you to fail over and get those machines back up and running again if everything else and everything is all lost locally. So when it comes to the StorageCraft data center, can you be sure that your data is going to be kept safe and that your machines are actually going to be able to run? Are you going to get the performance that you need? Or is this just some kind of pasted together solution that barely holds together when something is wrong, and is it going to fail on you later on? And the answer is we've really built a gung-ho data center. We've got a solution in place that is very stable, very secure, and we've pretty much pulled out all the stops to make sure that you're going to get the performance that you need and the reliability that you need as well. When it comes to our data centers, all of them are Tier 3 and 3+ data centers. And they are compliant both with all these different the compliance. HIPAA, for example, it actually meets a lot of the requirements to keep your organization compliant with those particular standards. When it comes to the hardware, a couple things you want to take note of. Everything is redundant. We have several copies of all of your data across several different racks and several different physical machines, so that there's no single point of failure within the StorageCraft Cloud at all. This goes for virtual machines that you may have launched, in a recovery type of a situation. We have multiple copies, and we have different machines actually working on and managing all of those. Everything is completely scalable. We can actually grow our cloud based on the very specific need. We can add additional storage. We can create multiple virtual machines all running at the same time. We do use a distributed Ceph storage system, fully distributed, which means that everything works together. We're able to go ahead and span our storage across multiple devices seamlessly, so that everything is actually looking and all appears to be the same storage, even though it's spread out across multiple devices. And again, because we got that redundancy, it'll always look that way, even if we are to lose, even just if we lost a single rack, we still have that backup data spread out across multiple other racks and systems. And then, of course, like it says, all devices are spread across the storage servers instead of tied to a single server. So, the word of the day here, I guess, if I wanted to say anything at all, would be redundancy. The StorageCraft Cloud service is redundant, and it's built for performance. So those are the kind of things you want to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to the StorageCraft service levels, not all disasters are the same. Okay, I'm kind of what's the word I'm trying to say? I'm prefacing my presentation here with the idea that we may actually have to do failover, that we actually have a critical system down. But sometimes it's just a matter of being able to have a safe place to store your backup images. Maybe the time to get back and running is not as important as just making sure your data is there. So given that not all disasters are the same or require the same level of attention, you'll notice that we have 3 different service levels when it comes to the StorageCraft Cloud. Service level number 1, we call that our Cloud Basic. This is really just archival storage of your backup data. We don't offer any specific. If you choose to replicate one of your backup image sets for one of your maybe non-critical machines but does have critical data, you may want to consider the Cloud Basic option, because we're just going to be archiving your backup images. We'll keep them safe and sound. There's no special features built into the cloud if you choose the service level, but we are going to be able to put in a request, grab those backup images, and have them sent to you by way of a restore drive, a drive you can actually use to recover those systems with. So, when the time finally comes and when that need arises. So, no immediate failover with that particular service level, but it provides the necessity, or it actually satisfies the need of having your backup data offsite. We have our Cloud Plus option. All right, now this is going to give you everything in that Cloud Basic, which really is just that archival store, but we're going to add the ability for you to be able to recover on a file-by-file basis. If you find yourself in a scenario where you're missing a critical piece of data, a critical Word document, right, or maybe payroll, your entire spreadsheet and the system that you're working with, maybe the database files that are needed for a specific function are no longer available, they become corrupted locally, and then luck would have it, maybe your backups locally have also been corrupted, but your systems are running, that's not the thing, I just need my data back. With our Cloud Plus, we can actually get you logged into your cloud services portal by way of a web browser. You can find a point in time that you want to restore that backup data from, and you can zip up and recover and download the individual files that are needed. And this is actually something that I can show you when I do the quick cloud services demo that's a little bit later on in the presentation. But that's what our Cloud Plus will get you. All right? Again, we're not bringing up systems, critical systems. We're not going to bring them back online and connect to them. This is kind of a step up from our Cloud Basic, which allows file and folder recovery. Then, of course, there's our Cloud Premium option. All right? Now, you're going to get everything that's in Cloud Plus as well as instant virtualization. Now, this is your real failover. This is the cream of the crop. And I challenge anybody to find a service like this that is going to be as user-friendly and as quick and efficient as what it is that we have to offer. And I will go ahead and show you what failover looks like whenever we're dealing with the Cloud Premium service. But again, Cloud Premium, I mean, this is the kitchen sink. You've got the Cloud Basic capability. We're going to keep your data stored. We can still provide the file and folder recovery. But with Cloud Premium, we can actually bring a system online by way of a virtual machine, reading directly from your backup images. We can attach to those machines by way of a VPN that you can set up. We've got network parameters we can all set up beforehand so that when that disaster happens, all we have to do is hit go, and we essentially can rebuild those critical servers in our cloud network, and you can attach to them locally by way of VPN access. It's a fantastic solution, and one that I'm actually really excited to show you. In addition to that, we do have a mirroring option. If you take a look at that, we can take your backup data in our primary data center, and we can replicate it to a secondary data center so that not only do you have redundancy within the initial data center that we're going to replicate to, but you can have that data replicated offsite to another data center as well. So in that very, very, very slim chance that the initial storage data center that we use, something were to actually happen, it just happens to be in the way of a nuclear strike or something, I don't know, we still have your backup data across the country at a secondary mirrored location. And we have that option for you, all right? And then, of course, when it comes to that premium option, and again, we're dealing with the networking side of things, you can actually select what your IP scheme is going to be. You will have your own private network that all machines will be able to boot up and attach to, and we'll be able to communicate within prior to getting that VPN set up. So it's a fantastic solution, very, very complete, and I think you're going to like what it is that you have to see. A couple other things that you want to know about the StorageCraft Cloud services. We're talking here that very top option, that direct browser virtualization. Essentially, it's a single portal access. In order to do anything that you want to within the StorageCraft Cloud, there's a single portal that you're going to access from a web browser. You log in, you're going to be able to see all the different machines that are associated with your account. You'll be able to click on the machines, get information about them. If you need to create a virtual machine, the option is built in right there. You don't have to go anywhere else. Once the machine is running, we have direct remote desktop access right there from your browser into that machine, so it's not like we need to have any additional components to get everything done. Log into your cloud services browser, perform the different tasks that are needed, and you can do it all from one interface. You can also set up what we call an independent cloud retention policy. All right? Locally, there's an application that we use in our typical image-based solution that you might find locally called Image Manager. And Image Manager's role is to not just verify your backup files that are resting there locally, but can also create a consolidation and retention scheme, which allows you to determine, what kind of time frame you want to keep for that backup data. How many recovery points representing what periods of time? Do you want to have a recovery point representing the end of last month or the end of last week or maybe even just yesterday or several days prior? You can actually set those parameters up, and when that backup data replicates into the StorageCraft Cloud, you can designate a separate little retention policy. You can choose how many recovery points you want to keep, how recent or how long term you want to be able to go back to find a recovery point that you can actually restore with. All right, that's completely within your control, and it doesn't have to be the same policy that you had locally that Image Manager was currently working at. And then let me also point your attention to the fact that we do have some pretty great networking, all right? Some of the enhanced networking features, first of all, we do support BGP, which essentially is that routing protocol over the Internet. We are completely BGP capable. You're not necessarily going to have a whole lot of controls, but everything is pretty much working on a set of defaults that work out just fine. This actually works really great when we're going to fail over from our data center 1 to data center 2 in the event of an actual failure, and we need to actually use that mirrored site, right? We do support, when it comes to our VPN options, we support OpenVPN and IPsec. I will actually be demonstrating the OpenVPN option for you, although IPsec is definitely something that we use, that router-to-router capability where you can actually route your local traffic in through a router, a physical router, and then into the StorageCraft Cloud in a scenario like that. We do provide, like I said, private and public IP addresses. We can also give you your own. You can request your own public IP address for the purposes of your VPN, setting up a firewall and all those types of things. And then, of course, your dynamic private IP addresses so that each machine can actually utilize DHCP. You can set DHCP reservations if you want so that each machine, when it boots up, has the exact same private IP address that's going to hold in the cloud, or you can have DHCP manage that on its own. Individual firewalls and networks, I'll show you what that's all about. We do have a firewall that is going to be able to be configured so that you can set up those VPNs. We support port forwarding, port blocking. So, we can restrict access and open up access to certain machines based on ports that need to be used in order to gain access to specific services. And then, of course, we can control the networking options such as DHCP. So, we got a pretty comprehensive networking solution for you once those virtual machines are up and running. And again, I'll be able to highlight a lot of that when we get into the StorageCraft Cloud, and I'm able to show you that a little bit later on. Now, when it comes to recovery, notice that we say here we have the option or the capability to do instantaneous failover of a single machine or an entire site using our virtual machine policy. I'm going to introduce that policy to you, or that virtual machine policy to you, when I take you into the StorageCraft Cloud and you see what that looks like. But essentially, you got 10, 15, 20 servers. Their backups are being replicated into the StorageCraft Cloud. You know what? We can actually help you to set a policy so that you don't have to launch each individual machine independent of each other. Go in, launch machine number 1, go and launch machine number 2, one at a time, and then wait for it all to set up. You can build a policy beforehand and actually stress dependencies from one to the other. Machine A needs to be launched before machine B does, that type of thing. And you can set a policy so that it automates that entire process, and all you have to do is hit go. And it'll launch that entire virtual machine policy, get all those virtual machines booted up in the order that you specify automatically so that you can stand back and not have to worry about doing each one individually. And, again, that goes to the ability to make this particular service very, very user-friendly. And then also notice that we have, when it comes to our BMR, which we refer to as our bare metal recovery drive, if you find yourself in a scenario where, maybe you utilize the StorageCraft Cloud, maybe you've had to fail over, you've got virtual machines running, and, it's now been a couple weeks, it's been a day later, it's been whatever it is, you're ready to restore locally again. You've purchased new equipment, you've restored, or you've repaired certain equipment, whatever it is, you're now able to do a restore so you can launch things and host things locally again. We have a bare metal restore process that is very, very easy to work with. You request a drive from us, we'll send everything that's currently up to date within the cloud based on the backup data that we have. We'll send it to you. And in scenarios where you have a virtual machine running and we know that changes have been made within that cloud backup data, first of all, anything that's currently stored and updated, we're going to be completely up to date with what those virtual machines look like at the time that we send out the actual BMR drive. Which means that maybe you're going to keep that virtual machine up and running again, and we would definitely suggest you do that. Just keep it running while you're doing the initial restore. That restore process in that recovery environment will actually connect into the StorageCraft Cloud and capture the current data of a virtual machine that you might have kept running while that BMR drive has been shipped out to you. So you can capture the very latest, up-to-the-minute image of what that machine looks like at the time that you're doing that recovery process. So we're able to do that really, really well. And we are going to be able to provide those BMRs by way of a USB 3 drive. Okay, So, that's a lot of blabbing. I've just been sitting here talking for a little bit. I'm thinking that what everybody's really anxious to get to now is a quick demo of what it is that StorageCraft has to offer. And I think we're gonna fit this in really, really nicely to our front time frame. Give me just 1 second here, and I will begin sharing my screen. All right. There we go. I'm currently sharing. So, like I said, I'm going to go back a little bit before we can go forward. I want to quickly introduce you to the StorageCraft image-based solution. All right? Oops. So, before we start putting backup data into the StorageCraft Cloud, we do need to make sure that we've got good, solid backup images locally, right? The StorageCraft solution consists not of just the cloud service. We're not going to ever back up directly to the StorageCraft Cloud for disaster recovery. We do have to take individual backups of each machine locally first, and for that reason we have what we call Shadow Protect SPX. Shadow Protect is the flagship product of StorageCraft. It's something that we've been doing really since the very, very beginning. Shadow Protect is an image-based backup, a snapshot of the sector level, and we create a backup image file that is saved in our own proprietary format. We support the full backups as well as incrementals. We can set those incrementals to back up periodically as often as every 15 minutes, or we can extend it to every hour, every 2 hours, once a day. But essentially what we do is we create a backup chain. And this backup chain now is a great representation of everything that's happened since we started that backup job. All right, and Shadow Protect SPX needs to be installed on each machine at home, all right, or at your local business where it is that you've actually got your brick and mortar setup. It supports both physical and virtual environments. So we're gonna perform the same both on a physical machine or on a virtual machine. And once we've got those backup images running, we're going to use another application called Image Manager, which is this one right here. Okay. Image Manager is going to do just what its name implies, and that is manage your backup images. Image Manager's role is actually very, very important. Even before you push that backup data into the StorageCraft Cloud, Image Manager's role is to verify those backup files. Once Shadow Protect starts creating a backup image chain, and you've got that full backup of the different recovery points in all these incrementals, Image Manager's role is to verify those files. And it'll make sure that every single file within that backup chain is verified for consistency. It's looking to make sure those files are not becoming corrupted. And it's a very important piece of making sure those backup images are being managed correctly. The last thing you want is to be able to attempt a restore of your backup data, and then realize that the pieces within that backup that are required to do the restore are not available because the files are corrupted, or you can't do the restore because your backup chain is incomplete somehow. Files accidentally just are no longer working, or cannot be read, and that is something that we absolutely cannot have if we're going to have a good, solid backup and disaster recovery solution in place. So Image Manager is critical. It's going to double check, make sure those files are in good shape, and that's its primary function. Second to that, it also controls your retention policy. All right, Image Manager is set up in such a way that when you create a backup chain and you've got this continuous chain running, and you've got all these different recovery points over time representing everything that's happened from day one, through the first couple weeks to a month, a year, you've got a nice long backup chain. Image Manager provides a consolidation feature that is going to take those backup image sets at the end of each day, the end of each week, and the end of each month, and create a consolidated file representing the end of the day, week, or month. And that's then going to take the place of the smaller files representing that day, or representing the week, or representing the month, which then allows you to purge those files out and keep those consolidated points in time. Shrinking your backup chain, helping you to control how much data is actually being kept and stored, and allowing you to essentially define the time frame that you want to actually be able to still recover from. And so that's the second piece that Image Manager does. Now, it's also very critical with the StorageCraft Cloud services because Image Manager will also be in charge of replicating the backup data to the StorageCraft Cloud. I mean, it does more than just replicate to the StorageCraft Cloud. You can replicate pretty much anywhere you want, from from its current location to a drive that you can then take home. You can push your backup data to another data center somewhere off-site. But what we're concerned about is making sure that we can connect to the StorageCraft Cloud, and we actually have our StorageCraft Cloud Services connector built into Image Manager. All right, so as you're beginning to think through what it is that's necessary in order for this solution to work, it's all going to start with Shadow Protect and Image Manager locally, okay? And, even without the StorageCraft Cloud, it is these tools that'll make sure that you've got a fantastic backup and disaster recovery solution at home so that you can do those quick restores in those onesie-twosie type scenarios. Let's say it's only a single machine that's failed. Well, you're going to use the StorageCraft tools that you have locally to be able to bring that system back up online rather than fail over to the cloud. One thing that StorageCraft Shadow Protect actually offers that I have not discussed, but you may already know about, is a feature called Virtual Boot, which can bring the system online by way of a virtual machine reading directly from the backup images, very similar to what we actually do in the StorageCraft Cloud. And of course, these are all conversations our additional salespeople can talk with you if everything that we're talking about here sparks your interest. We'd love to have these conversations with you about how we can actually work in your environment locally. But let's jump to the cloud now. All right. Now that I've given you a brief intro about what's required locally, once you've got your cloud services account set up, once you've got Image Manager sending that backup data into the StorageCraft Cloud, what does that actually look like? What's actually available there? Well, let's go ahead and log in to what we call our Cloud Services portal by way of a web browser. All right, so I'm logging into what we call a partner portal. I've got, because I'm a StorageCraft employee, I've got very special privileges, and I can do a little bit more than just the cloud services through this portal. But I want to introduce you to the StorageCraft Cloud Services portal here. Maybe it will let me in. There we go. We'll try that again. Didn't look like it wanted to let me in last time. This looks a little bit better. Okay. It's running a little bit slower than I had expected, but I think we're probably all right. Anyway, take a look at all these great awards that StorageCraft is actually winning. We're doing some great things. Cloud Services is accessed right over here. So here we go. This is what your Cloud Services portal actually looks like. All right. Now, of course, I've got all the different accounts that have been set up under me showing up right in here. If I want to actually see the different devices that have been replicated, I can actually see these down below by clicking on the little plus sign. All right. So if I look at my Demo Lab account, I've got a file server and a Windows 7 machine. Both of them are being backed up locally, and both of them have replicated their backup data into the StorageCraft Cloud. And I've got some information at the account level, how many machines have been sent in, any virtual machines that might be running. Do I have public IPs that have been requested so that I can set up my firewall? All that type of information is right there. But now if I click on the machines themselves, I get specific information about the actual machine. So of course, up here, my machine name is shown, which GUID it's, the GUID associated with it. If I'm replicating, let's say I've got a machine that's backing up and it's got more than one drive, it'll show me which one it had identified as being my boot volume, so that when I launch a VM, of course my VM option is found right up here. Just see how easy that is if I want to launch my virtual machine. Now I'm going to jump on the virtual machine piece here in just a second. You'll see just how quick and easy that is. But as far as everything else that you may want to know about, down here, just within this little blue ribbon there, if it comes to individual file and folder support, all of my different recovery points can be found down in here. And I've only got one that's active for this particular file server, one snapshot that's currently saved. But if I wanted to do a restore of a single file, all I got to do is click on the point in time that I'm needed. It'll then reveal all of the different volumes that have been backed up for that machine, for that specific point in time. In this case, I'm only backing up my C drive. So if I wanted to restore a single file, I'm simply going to mount my C drive. All right, we'll go ahead, put in my backup password. I think I typed that right. There it is. And notice that it says that it's mounting. Once the mount is complete, essentially what it's doing is it's opening up that backup set and is going to show me what the contents of that machine looked like at the time that this particular backup file was created. So once this mounting is complete, I'm going to be able to browse through my hard drive, so to speak, just as if it was local. I'll be able to find all my different folders. There we go. I'll find all my different folders. Let's go ahead and browse it. Notice there's my C drive. I've got all the different folders associated with it. I know that over here in my mumbo jumbo, I've got a whole bunch of important files. Like my Depeche Mode music and stuff like that. All I need to do is choose the one that I'm interested in. Click on Create Zip File. It actually zips that file up for me and will allow me to actually download that. Now, it looks like it might take a minute to zip that, so I'm going to cancel my restore. But that's it. I mean, if I wanted to restore a single file or a folder, I could actually do a complete folder if I wanted to. That's why I wanted to download the entire Depeche set. Again, I can create a zip file. It'll zip everything within that folder up into a single file that I can then download. All right, so this is what is meant by the file and folder recovery option that's available in the StorageCraft Cloud. And that's available in Cloud Plus and Cloud Premium service level. All right, so that's very important for you to understand and know. So that's how we do the file and folder restores. Now, let's talk about what I think everybody is probably most interested in, and that is, okay, how do I fail over to the StorageCraft Cloud? All right, you know that the title of our webinar refers to failover with the flick of a switch. Now, is it really that easy? You know, it may not be a single switch. It may require just a very little preparation beforehand, but man, we're pretty dang close to just flicking a switch. And let me show you what I'm talking about. At the account level, when I know that I've got critical machines that have been replicated into the StorageCraft Cloud, and I know that if there's an actual disaster, I can set up all of my networking components, everything that's needed beforehand. You'll notice that when I click on my account, I've got this area right here for networking. If I click on networking, get a load of this, and see just how easy this is to set up. Nothing complicated at all. First off, it shows me my subnet configuration. Each of my machines that boot up will be assigned their own private network. They'll be assigned to their own private network. Okay, they're going to get their own IP address, in this case on my 192.168.230 network. Okay, I can modify this if I want. If I don't like the 192.168 scheme, I can choose the 172.16, 10.0, which is going to support more and more machines if that's actually needed. Otherwise, of course, I may not need to modify that. But then how do I gain access to those servers? Right? All those servers are going to be signed up on this, they're going to boot up and they're going to be assigned to this one network, but I'm going to need to provide outside access, right? Well, get a load of this. Like I said before, we have an IPsec VPN configuration that I can set up, which essentially really requires that we know where the remote network is, you know, the name of the remote network and the gateway associated with it. We want to know the mask we're going to use, and we're simply going to define a shared key. That shared key is going to be set up on either side, and our connection is going to be facilitated. Or there's also the OpenVPN connection, which I'll go ahead and demonstrate to you here in just a second. Essentially, we're going to create a network between the client through the OpenVPN app and the actual firewall. We're going to go ahead and give it an appropriate mask, and then we start adding the different users. OpenVPN is an open-source, client-based VPN connector. You know, if you got the outside world wanting to connect into the StorageCraft Cloud network, all you need to do is run the OpenVPN client, connect to the network, and you're ready to go. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate that for you in just a little bit. But none of that's going to work if you don't have a firewall you can connect to. So notice that we give you the ability to actually set up a firewall. All right, it's going to have its own dedicated public IP address, and you can request that public IP address right down in here. All right, once the IP address has been used up, you can go ahead and disable that, and it's no longer used. You can release it, and it's no longer used. In this case, I've got an IP address that has not yet been released. If I need another one, I can go ahead and click on Add IP Address. Notice the rest of your networking options. Okay, when it comes to your private addresses that are going to be assigned to your machines, you can either have them be straight up DHCP, or we can do a DHCP reservation where you can actually say, listen, I don't want DHCP to assign any arbitrary IP address. Let's go ahead and assign it something else. Maybe I don't want it to be assigned 11. Maybe I want it to be assigned a client IP address of .20. I can go ahead and make that happen, and it'll always use .20 in that IP address. So something that's really important for you to be able to understand and know. And then also notice we can set up network mappings. Like I said before, we can go ahead and add additional mappings to those different machines. So once machines are booted up, we can actually say, okay, you know, we've got an IP address. We can go ahead and set up the port forwarding is essentially what we're doing. We can go ahead and forward specific ports for your web servers, for your email servers, and that type of thing right down in here. All right, let's talk about recovery now. All right, when it's time for me to boot up a virtual machine, what are my options? Well, I can come up to each individual machine independently. I can go to my file server, launch the virtual machine. I can then come to my Windows 7 machine and launch that virtual machine as well. Or I could, again, back over here in my networking area, I can create what we call a virtual machine policy. You know, and this will say, all right, all I got to do is essentially hit go, and it'll go ahead and launch my policy. So what is the policy? When you click Virtual Machine Policy, it brings you up this little work, I call it a little work area, right? And all the different machines that have been replicated under that account are going to be showing right in here. You'll notice I got my file server and my Windows 7 machine. Well, what do? Well, I'm going to take these different machines and I'm going to bring them over to my workspace. Oh, I got to put my password in there. And then submit it, and it'll actually take that machine over into my, oops, did it not do that? Let's try this again. There we go, hit submit. Oh, it didn't like my password for that. Well, no wonder it's not letting me do it. Well, essentially, though, you can actually take the different machines, drag them over. Let's see if this will work. There we are. Give it a second here. There it is. I'll bet you I just typed this in wrong. Let's try that one more time. There we are. So you can drag the different machines off to this into your little workspace and then draw lines to them indicating that one machine depends on the other. So this file server won't boot up until this Windows machine, this Windows 7 machine does. I can go ahead and edit this so that I have the ability to add additional seconds. If it's going to take a couple minutes, I can go ahead and give this 120 minutes before, or 120 seconds before it finally boots up. All right, but we can do that to all the different machines. Drag them all off into this workstation, this work area. Draw lines from one machine to the other. Which machine depends on which. When it's all said and done, you can save it. All right, right now it's saved. I can close this this window right now, and I can come back to this virtual machine policy later. It's going to save that information. Here in just a second. And when the time comes, all I have to do is hit Launch VM Policy, and it's going to launch these different virtual machines, starting with my Windows 7 machine. Now, I'm going to go ahead and launch my file server right here just by clicking on Start VM. All right? And look how easy that is. I am building a virtual machine directly from my backup images. So if my critical machines have failed locally, all I have to do is launch the VM. It's ready to boot. All I need to do now is click on View, and I have a remote desktop connection directly into that machine. I can watch it boot up. Once it's completely up and running again, I'm going to be able to log in and actually have access to that machine, remote desktop access to that machine. So I'm going to let this boot up here for just a second, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like to actually connect with that OpenVPN. In fact, while it's booting, let me actually go ahead and show you that. So again, at the account level, I go to my networking. Let's check and see if my firewall has started. Get a load of that. My firewall status is active. My firewall is actually ready to go, which means my network has started. And locally here, I actually have my OpenVPN account set up. Okay, OpenVPN, it's right there. Now, you'll notice I've actually created an OpenVPN user. I've got a configuration file that's specific to this machine. What I've done to make sure this is all set up, I've installed OpenVPN on my machine. I just need to copy this data and then save it into the OpenVPN profile. As you can see, I've already done that, and I'm user number 1. As you can see right there, user number 1. Now, if I want to connect then to my network, all I got to do is hit connect. It starts the connection right now, and I'm on. I am now connected to this network in the cloud. I'm connected to network 192.168.230.0. All right. Now all that I have to do is simply wait and let this machine finish booting, which it should finish here in just a second. I will log in, and I will actually show you that I can ping this machine from my local desktop here. I will show you that I can actually modify a file. And with that, given the time that we're at, I'm actually ahead of time. That's actually a lot better than I thought. Then the actual demo piece will pretty much be done. We could probably move on to question and answers. But hopefully I'm hitting all the high points here with what it was that you were looking for. Let me see. What else can I actually show here while this is booting up? Because nobody wants silence while I'm just waiting for stuff to happen, right? Let me see. Oh yeah, let's go back to my account. So you're probably also wondering what happens in a scenario where you're ready to restore locally. All right, I've already mentioned to you that we can build the VM, we can do the file and folder restores, but let's say that we've utilized the cloud as we've needed it, and I've repaired some machines locally. What is it now that I need to do? You'll notice there's a little area at the account level right here in this little blue ribbon that says Seed VMR. If I click on this, I can actually come down here and request. We call it a C drive, but we have the option when I open this form to choose this, whether it's a C drive or a BMR. Which brings up another point. I didn't really mention this. You can take your initial full backup and seed it into the cloud. You can request a drive from us. We'll send it to you. You can offload your initial full backup onto that drive and send that back to us, and we will automatically populate the cloud for you. That way you don't have to worry about potential bottlenecks as you're trying to push potentially large full backup image files into the StorageCraft Cloud. But like I said, this is also where you can request your restore drive. We'll then take all the backup data that we have. We'll push it onto that drive and then send that over to you. You can use that to do your restores locally. Now let's see if we're logged in yet. Yes, we are. Let's go ahead and click OK. I'm going to log into my machine. And again, I'm doing all of this from a single portal. Like that. Let's try that again. There we are. All right. Again, like I said, we're doing all of this from one single portal. I've got remote desktop access now into this machine that just booted up. Once I have access to the desktop, I'll go ahead and show you that I've been assigned an IP address specific to my local network. Right there, 192.168.230.100. If I come back to my account, take a look at networking, what are we at? 192.168.230, and my machine is 100. Very good. Now it's up and running. I'm connected to this network. Let's see if I can connect from my local machine. All right, let's see if we can ping this. 192.168.230.100. Look at that. I'm pinging. All right. So I have access to this machine now directly from my desktop. Not only that, I've actually set this machine up already so that it's sharing some important folders. All right. So let's go ahead and open this up. All right. Let's go back to my C drive here. It's my mumbo jumbo folder that I'm currently sharing, and I've created a test file right here. Let's open this up real quick. All right. This is a test file. So that's great. We'll go ahead and leave this the way that it is and kind of get this out of the way. Now let's see if I can access the machine. What I'm going to do, actually let's go back in here. I'm sorry, we're going to close this for now. But I'm going to access this file from my desktop, and I'm going to make a change. And we're going to see if that change is actually shown after I actually do this. This is really just proof that everything's currently working. So let's go ahead and go ahead and see if I can connect to that machine here. Yep, sure enough I can. There's my mumbo jumbo folder. There's my test file. It's right there. Okay. Happy Tuesday. All right. There we go. So let's go ahead and save my file. All right. Did it. Let's go ahead and close it. We can go ahead and get out of here now. So let's go back into my StorageCraft Cloud, and let's open my test file now. There it is. I'm modifying this file. Happy Tuesday. So there it is. All right. I have been able to show that I've got direct connectivity into this virtual machine that I have launched in the StorageCraft Cloud. I access it by way of a VPN, and guess what? This is something I was able to accomplish less than 5 minutes. All right. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood the real power and the value of the StorageCraft Cloud services. StorageCraft has been putting together this solution now. It's been since 2012 that we offer our cloud services, and it's only getting better. There are a number of different things that are going on our roadmap that are going to be adding additional capabilities and additional services that we have to offer. And this is just one of the great things that StorageCraft is currently doing. With that, the demonstration is complete, and my presentation is actually done. So I'm going to go ahead and shut down this virtual machine. We're going to go ahead and log out of my portal, and we'll go ahead and get back into my slides here. I think it's this one right. Where are my slides? Pause sending app share. There we go. All right. So we should be looking at slides again. As you can see, we're now moving over to questions and answers. Mike, thanks for the time to share that. That was actually really fun for me, and I hope that it's generating all sorts of different questions. But I'm going to turn the time over to you to kind of officiate the question and answer time.
All right. Hey, thanks very much, Martin. A lot of great information. We encourage, again, people to, if they want to send questions in, look down in the lower left part of your browser and just type away there, and we will get to them as best as we can. So what do you think some of the most common issues that come up with some of your new partners coming on board regarding kind of understanding this and being able to pitch this for their customers?
You know, a lot of it is just helping them understand what it is that we're currently doing. I get a lot of questions around Image Manager, you know, and what is it that makes it unique. And I was hoping to kind of share where that comes in. People will get some of the features of Image Manager confused with other features of Shadow Protect SPX. But what it really comes down to, the biggest challenge, and honestly it's not really a challenge, because once you mess around with our software for just a few minutes, once you mess around with the cloud, it really is pretty intuitive. We find that the ramp-up time for a lot of our partners is actually very, very small and very short. We like to make sure that there's direct communication with their account managers and people like myself, the sales engineers, to make sure that they get up to speed very, very quickly. But I would say that's probably the biggest challenge. That and being able to be patient enough before they go out and start making money. You know, that's probably the biggest challenge.
All right, great. And then, all right, we've got a question here. If you can kind of compare StorageCraft to some of the competitors in this space, like what separates you from them and why make the choice?
Good question. So there are several competitors. You're probably going to find that StorageCraft shares a lot of similar features to other applications out there. You're going to hear names thrown around like Aperture, Acronis. You're going to hear Veeam as one that we hear a lot about. In fact, they're actually a very high-level competitor, somebody that we run into quite a bit, and they actually do a really good job with what they're doing. But I would say the things that really separate ourselves, and I'm gonna go ahead and pick on Veeam here for a minute. First off, is they're virtual environments only. They don't really have a good, solid physical solution. So that's one of the things that really kind of sets us apart to start with, especially going against Veeam, is we can take an actual image of a physical machine, we can restore it to virtual. We can take a virtual machine image, restore it to physical. And then when it comes to the StorageCraft Cloud, nobody really, I mean, regardless of the competition, nobody has the type of solution that it is that we actually have, where we can do our own self-service, launch our own virtual machines. If you're a partner, launch virtual machines on behalf of your client and actually have them up and running immediately. There is no option to put in a request and then an hour later or maybe a day later we finally have a virtual machine up and running. It's not like that. It really is instantaneous, and that is something that we have to offer that we really, we're kind of the leaders in this particular type of a scenario. You're not going to find a similar solution, even in the cloud, compared to what it is that we have to offer.
All right, great. Okay, next couple of questions. What platform for the cloud, or Azure or AWS?
For cloud, Azure, and AWS? Okay, that's a great question. So right now, when we look at Azure and AWS, again, they're not associated specifically with our cloud service. That's something that's completely independent. When it comes to Azure and AWS, if you want to utilize those as essentially maybe storage repositories that you can replicate and keep your backup data to, we actually work just fine. In fact, this question may have been prompted because I showed Image Manager, that replication option, and AWS or the StorageCraft, or I'm sorry, the Amazon S3 service is now available. We can actually replicate with a connector from Image Manager directly to the Amazon S3 service. But in scenarios where we're dealing with Azure and AWS, we're looking at those as destinations to store backup data typically. Now, if you're using those services, Azure and AWS, for actually launching and hosting VMs, we can back those up. Just put the Shadow Protect SPX client within each of them, and we can actually create backup images, and we can store them in that same Azure or AWS cloud, and that data is all going to be there. The immediate restore options are limited, though, if you go with those solutions. That's one thing that you want to be aware of. But that's essentially how we work with those particular. They're usually repositories for storage of your backup data.
Okay, and then you're right, Martin. I think that some of these questions did come in during the demo, and here's another one I think similarly related to that. Any particular browser to use? And I think, again, this was referring to your demo.
Oh, yeah. No, great question. We are not specific to any browser. Chrome works very, very well. Firefox, and then Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge. I would consider those your top 3 browsers, and I would say you could work with any of those browsers without any problem. Opera and some of these others, more obscure, Safari, I'm pretty sure Safari works just fine. Haven't heard of any issues. So if it's a web browser and it's got Java, I don't think you're going to have any issues gaining access to the StorageCraft Cloud.
All right. Another question. What appliances are needed on site?
Oh, yeah, that's actually a good question. When you're talking about your on-site backup, we're actually really, really flexible. If you're in a smaller environment and all you can afford is a USB drive and you want to piggyback that off of your critical server, we can back up to that USB drive, no problem. A more robust solution is something where you may want to consider a NAS device. That's actually fine, a dumb NAS, and you're just going to share that storage across your network. We'll back up to that just fine. I guess I would say your top-of-the-line solution, if it's something that you can put together, would be to actually build what we call a BDR, a backup and disaster recovery server. This would be an actual machine that has a Windows operating system on it. You can throw the Shadow Protect SPX console on it, put Image Manager on it, and let that be your repository. Building up something with a little bit of RAM so that you can perform virtualizations of those backup images right there on that device is also a good option. Of course, the cost for each of these goes up as I'm saying them, right? A USB drive for a single machine, that's very, very cost effective, but not as robust as far as what your restore options are. But the key to know is that if you can dream it, we can probably back up to it. And of course, the best solution, the best scenario would be to perhaps build an actual BDR server, a backup server that stores your backup images, has the Shadow Protect software on it to perform fast and easy restores, and Image Manager on it as well to manage those backup files and perform replication right from that device.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, next up, do you think is this type of service something to sort of lead with on trying to secure new business?
I would absolutely say yes. Backup and disaster recovery is becoming more than just a buzzword. With the stories out there of malicious use of equipment by individuals who might be leaving your company, or you look at ransomware, you look at all these different dangers now to critical data, and even looking at how many critical systems there are out there, whether they're virtual or physical machines, everybody is worried about making sure that they're not going to be down, that their business is not going to suffer if there's a problem. Having a robust backup and disaster recovery solution is usually at the top of the list of those priorities that a lot of your clients are going to have. So I would definitely say lead with the StorageCraft solution because, first of all, it's fantastic. It's going to hit all the high points that your clients are most likely looking for. It's flexible, so it could fit in just about any environment, whether you're a very small organization, medium, and even some of your large businesses. We're actually finding a really strong foothold now. So I would definitely say you could definitely lead off with the StorageCraft solution.
All right, excellent, excellent. And directly related to that, your description was perfect. Does your partner program offer like sort of marketing materials or support to help to pitch these services?
Absolutely. Yep, we've got all sorts of marketing materials. As a partner, you're going to have access to the StorageCraft Partner Portal, where you're going to have a number of different resources available to you, whether you're actually reselling our licenses or whether you're going to take advantage of our MSP licensing program. You've got a wealth of access to all sorts of marketing materials, pricing sheets, sales guides, and in addition to that, you've got a direct line into support as a partner and into an account manager, and you even have direct access to resources like myself, a sales engineer, to make sure that you get all your questions answered. And we're there to help out every step of the way.
All right, cool. And as storage targets are local, how do you protect against ransomware locking the backup targets?
Ooh, that's a great question. So, just like most other backup solutions, we don't have a ransomware button necessarily where you've got to say, okay, protect me from ransomware, and it's going to do it. Instead, we like to proselytize the idea of best practices that can guard against ransomware attacks. There's a wealth of conversation to be had about ransomware specifically, but let me just share a couple of highlights. All right, first off, the repository that you've got locally, lock it down. All right? If you've got a dedicated storage location, lock it down. If it's a share on your network, don't map to it. Instead, access it by way of its direct, it's the actual SMB or the CIFS address. All right? And then lock it down. Create a single backup user, and that's the only user you give access to. So that when you're setting up Shadow Protect to back up to that share, it utilizes that one single credential, and any other credentials will be disregarded and will not be authorized to access that share. And then, of course, replicate that data. Once you've got your initial backups, take those backups, put it someplace else geographically distant from the potential infection. Those would be probably your best courses of action when it comes to best practices in ransomware. Good question. Very relevant, by the way.
All right. Okay, next up, another good question. Do you work through distribution?
We do. We do work through distribution. Synex, Lifeboat, there's a number of different distributors that would Tech Data, a bunch of them that we work with. And if you want more information about who we work with, how we work through them, just reach out to one of our channel account managers, and we'll be happy to tell you about it.
All right, and I think that kind of all right. So I think we covered all of them there. So this is the point, Martin, where I go to you. So all right, any wrap-up thoughts? And this also gives our attendees another minute or two to type a question. So Martin, any kind of wrap-up thoughts or parting advice you'd like to give our audience today?
Yeah, I mean, specifically when it comes to the StorageCraft Cloud services, I want you to remember that the StorageCraft Cloud was devised, was created to address this very important need about making sure that you have your critical services available to you by way of a virtualization of your backup images and everything in those scenarios where you actually do have those disasters. Disasters can come in they can come all sorts of different ways. No disaster is equal to another. You know, a single disaster might simply be the loss of data, an accidental deletion, and then finding out your backups are corrupted. Or it could go all the way to a complete destruction of your facility by fire or by flood or something else like that. You never know what shape a disaster is going to take. But knowing that you have an option, knowing that you've got a plan where you can restore from just about any disaster, first of all, is going to make you sleep better at night. But second of all, is really going to save you in a scenario where you actually have to deal with that disaster. And so taking a look at off-site storage, the StorageCraft Cloud services specifically, you're going to go a long way in making sure that your business is protected and that you are covered in a scenario where you actually may be facing a disaster, in the unfortunate situation where that may actually happen. But with that, I think that's probably my biggest parting piece of information. If you're not considering off-site backup, be sure to start considering it.
Okay, and there's two quick questions. One of them was a request for kind of a follow-up contact information in the partner program. If I can, I'll answer that and just say that should all be included in any kind of feedback we send people who registered. And then the other question was quite interesting too. How do you respond to government requests for customer data?
How do we respond to government requests for customer data? You're probably referring to customer data that we may have in the StorageCraft Cloud. My understanding is I don't think we do. That is not our data. We cannot turn it over. But that is probably a great question for one of our product managers to see if that's something, if we do have something in place for that. But from my point of view, that's not ours to deal with. We'll host the backup data, but I don't think we've got any. I don't think we actually have. I don't know. I've never heard of us turning data over to anybody. It's private. It's encrypted. But I think a follow-up to one of our product managers might be a good course of action to make sure that gets answered.
All right, Martin. Hey, Martin, that was a lot of great information, and thank you for the lightning round there at the end with all the questions. A lot of good questions coming in. And just a reminder to everybody, too, that we will be making this presentation actually available on demand. So if you want to watch it again, it's great, or some of your colleagues want to check it out, we will provide a link, and we'll also send along the materials that were presented here today, too. So Martin Merrill from StorageCraft, thank you very, very much for your time today.
Hey, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Okay, and this is Michael Siggins again from Channel Pro on behalf of our team here in the production studio. We want to thank you all for taking the time out of your day. We hope you got a lot out of this. I know that we certainly did. So look forward to some feedback from us on the materials that we mentioned, and we wish you great success in your business. On behalf of everybody at Channel Pro and StorageCraft, thanks very much. We're going to shut things down now. Take care and have a good day. Bye-bye now.